This episode is sponsored by Kinsta. As a business, you have client meetings and keeping up with everyday tasks. Who has the time to stress out about site security and speed? Well, with Kinsta, the technical stuff is taken care of. Kinsta is your managed hosting provider for WordPress, meaning that customers get a hosting environment alongside a plethora of features, configurations, and optimizations. With Kinsta, you get lightning-fast load times, top-tier security, and unmatched human-only customer support. Whether you're a business owner, web developer, or running a digital agency, Kinsta makes managing your website easy and efficient. Did I mention fast load times? Just by moving to Kinsta, you can experience up to 200% faster load times, as well as enterprise-grade security. And thanks to their unlimited free expert-led migrations, Kinsta ensures a smooth transition from other hosting providers. I really enjoy My Kinsta, which is the platform's intuitive custom dashboards that make managing my website or multiple websites a breeze. Ready to experience Kinsta's hosting for yourself? Get your first month free when you sign up at kinsta.com today. It's the perfect opportunity to see why Kinsta is trusted by thousands of businesses worldwide to power their websites. Visit kinsta.com to get this limited time offer for new customers on select plans. Don't miss out. Get started for free today. Guys, I've got something cool to tell you about. As an engineering leader, a manager, and an engineer myself, I'm geeking out over a new product I'm just discovering that helps me with each of these points of view. The great team at SEMA, builders of the SEMA Intelligence Platform, have been working on what they call the Product Roadmap Radar. It's this integrated solution that uses generative AI to observe your code and Jira in order to summarize, synthesize, and make it easier to deliver your roadmap. It not only helps keep your roadmap on track, but it helps reduce the time engineers spend in meetings. Cue all the engineers clapping. The Product Roadmap Radar is extremely easy to set up. This only takes about 5 minutes. Just enable your integrations and let AI do all the mapping for you. My favorite part? I'm glad you asked. The radar doesn't just tell you about your roadmap. It suggests changes you need to make based on the code that's been written and the stories that have been addressed. No commenting, no special setup, all generative AI. It gives you an outside view of your roadmap based on the code and projects a target completion date based on outstanding work and activity. Again, no comments, no special setup. It even detects shadow work when development is being done but Jira isn't being updated. I'm pretty jazzed about it, and I think you will be too. Take a second to watch a short but awesome demo video. Go to codestory.co/PRR to watch it today. You'll like what you see. This episode is sponsored by Postman. Postman is the world's leading API platform, trusted by 98% of the Fortune 500 and over 40 million developers. Tap into APIs from 18,000 plus companies to power agents that make smarter decisions. Learn more at postman.com/podcast/codestory. This message is sponsored by Melee Search. Today, search isn't just a feature, it's a cornerstone. And Melee Search gives your users the experience they need with lightning-fast performance, full-text search, AI usage, and multimodal capabilities. Melee Search delivers relevant results in less than the blink of an eye. Use the promo code CODESTORY at checkout to get 2 months free at meleesearch.com. That's MEILI search.com.
Usually the reason something is successful is because the original idea was super solid. Staying true to that in whatever form you can is quite important for the long-term success of an organization. There will be a moment where people tell you, okay, you got to hire some adults. Go find some ex-Google executives or guys who are big at Microsoft, or maybe now it's like people who help scale OpenAI. And most of those people are usually worthless. You can be a mid-level employee that just was at a company that hit it really big, and suddenly you're seen as the top 2% of talent. And you're not the top 2% of talent. I am Austin Federa, one of the 3 co-founders of 00 and the president of the 00 Foundation.
This is Code Story, a podcast bringing you interviews with tech visionaries.
Spent 6 months moonlighting.
There's nothing on the back end.
Who share what it takes to change an industry.
I don't exactly know what to do next.
Took many goes to get right.
who built the teams that have their
A
back,
company is its
The
people.
teams help each other achieve
I was
more.
proud of our team.
keeping scalability top of mind.
All that infrastructure was a
Yes,
pain.
we've been fighting it as we grow.
Total waste of time.
The stories you don't read in the headlines.
It's not an easy thing to achieve, mind
Took it
you.
off the shelf and dusted it off and tried it again.
To ride the ups and downs of the startup life.
You need to really want
It's
it.
not just about technology.
All this and more on Code Story.
I'm your host, Noah Lappart, and today how Austin Federa is building a new, faster internet to boost performance, eliminate bottlenecks, and solve base layer connectivity. This episode is brought to you by Paddle. Don't settle for less when you can have more MOR with Paddle, your merchant of record. Eliminate the headaches of payments, grow your revenue everywhere, and focus on what you do best, building your product. Get more revenue with less hassle at paddle.com. This episode is brought to you by PropelOff. People take authentication for granted, but it's more than how customers log into your product. It's how you manage your relationship with your users. The easiest way to make authentication your advantage is to use PropelOff. PropelOff is more than just functional. It's powerful. With tools like Managed UIs, Enterprise SSO, robust user management features, and actionable insights, PropelOff adapts as your product grows. And the best part? When auth is effortless, your team can focus on scaling, not troubleshooting. That means more releases, happier customers, and more growth for your business. Save dev time, win over your customers, and propel your business forward with PropelOff. Check them out at propeloff.com. That's PROPELAUTH.com. Austin Federa has a non-traditional path into the blockchain world. In college, he studied political and environmental science and economics. Interestingly enough, those studies map a lot to the blockchain first principles. He was seriously looking to do his PhD, but fell out of love with that space and joined NPR as a journalist for a while. Then, of course, he got bit by the startup bug. But outside of tech, he enjoys living in Brooklyn, photography, and engaging in some form of learning at all times. He enjoys reading, mentioning the Children of Time series, and though it is fiction, he enjoyed the interwoven psychology and communal themes. Austin acknowledges that though we all love the internet, it's actually not very good for high-performance systems. And though companies are trying to build dedicated networks in the world, there hasn't been one created for blockchain, i.e., not centralized around a single party. This is the creation story of 00.
00 is a project that's setting out to build a new physical fiber network, which sounds super boring on its outset, but trust me, things get interesting. So what we're really doing at the end of the day is creating an alternative to the public internet for high-performance distributed systems. And the first major product market fit for that is blockchain, but it's certainly not a blockchain-only based system or even a system where blockchain is the best use case for something like this. This really comes out of the fundamental problem that the internet is not very good. Now, we all know and love the internet, but it's not good for high-performance systems. It is so bad for high-performance systems that most of the companies we think of today as big internet companies actually hardly operate on the internet at all. And this is surprising to a lot of people. Like, you think of Facebook and Google and Amazon and Netflix and Cloudflare as like big internet companies. What they really are is they're big network companies and big server companies and big software companies. But most of the usage of data movement for them is over private dedicated networks. It's not over the public internet. They use the public internet for last mile delivery, but Meta is actually one of the biggest investors and owners in subsea fiber, not out of the goodness of their heart because they want to make the internet a better place, but because they want to sell people ads. And if you can't get people connected to the internet and you can't have Instagram stories load basically instantly, and you can't have these type of like super fast experiences that people nowadays expect, they're not going to stick around and look at the ads for the products you're trying to sell them either. So it's a really interesting situation where most of these companies now, they started off as pure software companies. They moved into the data center spaces and they built their own data centers. And now we fast forward a few years later, and they're actually building full-fledged networks. The thing is, this has never existed for blockchain before, right? There's been companies that have tried to build dedicated networks before at certain times, but they really haven't been effective in being able to do that. And there's a lot of reasons why this is the case, but one of the main reasons why this is the case is they were run by one centralized company. And 00, there's a lot of innovations we have, but one of the main innovations is the ability to have a network, a high-performance, high-frequency network that's run by multiple independent contributors. And so it has all of these things that we know and love from the crypto world of censorship resistance, independent contributors, checks and balances, but it can perform at a much better rate than the public internet.
This will be interesting because I'm not even sure in my head where to start it, but tell me about the MVP for 00. What does that first version of 00 look like? And, obviously there's blockchain elements there, but what sort of tools are you using to bring it to life? And how long did it take you to stand it up?
So the first version of what we're building is a dedicated fiber network. Now, there's a lot of different versions of what that could be. Now, people I'm not sure exactly how technical your audience is, but people don't really realize that the internet is just a series of pipes, right? The pipes just happen to be made of glass and they carry light through them. But the internet is not in satellites, it is not in space, it is terrestrial cables and subsea cables that are all fiber lines. Now, when you're looking at like a modern undersea cable, there may be 8 pairs of fiber running through it. It's not much, right? You're basically talking about a cable, maybe the thickness of your arm when it's in the middle of the Atlantic or the Pacific, maybe a little bit fatter for some cables. But inside of it, it's a bunch of armoring and power to really protect like 8 pieces of human hair effectively. That's about the width of them. And that carries all of the world's information. And across each of those pairs of fiber nowadays, if you're running a modern system, you can put 140 channels, 140 wavelengths of light across them. And each one of those might be able to do 400 gigabits per second. And that is how data moves throughout the world today. And so at 00, these cable systems can cost hundreds of millions of dollars to put in. We are not laying new cables yet. Hopefully someday we'll get to a place where we can do that. What we and our contributors are doing for the most part is taking leases on one of those channels that runs over one of these pieces of fiber. And so it basically gives direct access to the bandwidth on these fiber networks. It means they're incredibly low latency and they have extremely little jitter because we're basically isolating all of our traffic from the rest of all of the public internet traffic, the same way that Google does this or Netflix does this or Cloudflare or even companies you wouldn't expect like eBay.
So I hear the leases part, and maybe that's part of the answer to my next question, but I'm curious about decisions and trade-offs, right? In that first version of 00, of building anything, you've got to make hard decisions. Tell me about some of those you had to work through and how you cope with those decisions.
One of the hard decisions that goes into something like 00 is how many network contributors do you really need? And you can think about this in a lot of different ways, but at the end of the day, how decentralized do you need something like this to truly be for it to be an alternative pathway for blockchain and consensus? And the answer really turns out to be there's only 20 tier 1 ISPs. So if we can get 20 network contributors, we can make a very credible argument that we are as decentralized as the public internet, which is a pretty wild thing to be able to say. The hard problems we basically have, they're not the types of problems where we're like, oh God, how do we even conceive of thinking this thing through? Most of the problems we have are much more around how long will it take us to build this thing? And can we get to market with something that delivers a lot of value now, even if it's not necessarily the final form that we would want this thing to be in? And so a lot of this is a lot of my ethos and like my drive within the organization is if you are shipping something you are proud of, you are shipping it too late.
This episode is brought to you by Paddle. As a startup, you face unique challenges to stay competitive. You and your team need to stay focused on your product, not your payments. You need to do more, MOR, and DIY less. With Paddle. Paddle is your merchant of record, becoming the seller of record for your SaaS transactions, enabling your team to focus on what's important, your product. Paddle handles all payment management across multiple gateways and methods, taking ownership of tax liability while remaining compliant with regulations across all markets. The platform handles all aspects of SaaS billing models, upgrades, add-on, trials, and more. Let's look at the results. MOR revenue optimization is built into Paddle and accounts for up to 16% higher conversion rates, reduced payment failures, localized pricing, and churn prevention, recovering 40% of cancellations. Their developer-friendly tools are API first with comprehensive documentation, removing the burden from your engineers. With Paddle as your merchant of record, you'll generate more revenue, find and keep more customers, grow faster, and stay compliant everywhere. So what are you waiting for? Get more revenue with less hassle at paddle.com. Guys, I've got something cool to tell you about. As an engineering leader, a manager, and an engineer myself, I'm geeking out over a new product I'm just discovering that helps me with each of these points of view. The great team at SEMA, builders of the SEMA intelligence platform, have been working on what they call the Product Roadmap Radar. It's this integrated solution that uses generative AI to observe your code and Jira in order to summarize, synthesize, and make it easier to deliver your roadmap. It not only helps keep your roadmap on track, but it helps reduce the time engineers spend in meetings. Cue all the engineers clapping. The Product Roadmap Radar is extremely easy to set up. This only takes about 5 minutes. Just enable your integrations and let AI do all the mapping for you. My favorite part? I'm glad you asked. The radar doesn't just tell you about your roadmap. It suggests changes you need to make based on the code that's been written and the stories that have been addressed. No commenting, no special setup, all generative AI. It gives you an outside view of your roadmap based on the code and projects a target completion date based on outstanding work and activity. Again, no comments, no special setup. It even detects shadow work when development is being done but Jira isn't being updated. I'm pretty jazzed about it, and I think you will be too. Take a second to watch a short but awesome demo video. Go to codestory.co/PRR to watch it today. You'll like what you see. This message is sponsored by Vanta. Trust isn't just earned, it's demanded. Whether you're a startup founder navigating your first audit or a seasoned security professional scaling your GRC program, proving your commitment to security has never been more critical or more complex. That's where Vanta comes in. Businesses use Vanta to establish trust by automating compliance for in-demand frameworks like SOC 2, ISO 27001, HIPAA, and more. And with automation and AI throughout the platform, you can proactively manage vendor risk and complete security questionnaires up to 5 times faster, getting valuable time back. Vanta can also save you money. A new IDC white paper found that Vanta customers achieve $535,000 per year in benefits. So the platform pays for itself in just 3 months. Join over 10,000 global companies like Atlassian, Quora, and Factory who use Vanta to manage risk and prove security in real time. For a limited time, listeners get $1,000 off Vanta at vanta.com/codestory. That's VANTA.com/codestory for $1,000 off. This episode is sponsored by Postman. APIs are the foundation of reliable AI, and reliable APIs start with Postman. Trusted by 98% of the Fortune 500, Postman is the platform that helps over 40 million developers build and scale the APIs behind their most critical business workflows. With Postman, teams get centralized access to the latest LLMs and APIs, MCP support, and no-code workflows, all in one platform. Quickly integrate critical tools and build multi-step agents without writing a single line of code. Start building smarter, more reliable agents today. Visit postman.com/podcast/codestory to learn more. That's postman.com/podcast/codestory. Okay, so then let's move forward. You've got the MVP, the first version. You're gaining the traction. You're seeing what you want to see with what you're building. How have you progressed it and matured it? And I think that to wrap that question in a box a little bit, what I'm looking for is how do you build your roadmap for 00? How do you decide what the next most important thing to build or to address is with the product?
We are pre-launch at the moment. We have a test net up and running, but the main net is coming later this year. And we've gone through a number of iterations of saying basically, hey, we thought we knew exactly what the market wanted from this thing, but it turns out it's maybe a little bit different. And so one of those great examples is we use this system that uses FPGAs, field programmable gate array. You can think of this as like a piece of silicon that can be reprogrammed on the fly. So normally in this world, we're dealing with software, which is infinitely programmable, can do a ton of different things, but is generally speaking pretty slow. And we deal with hardware application-specific circuitry that is quite fast, but can only do one thing. And if you look at a modern processor nowadays, there's the thing we call the CPU, which is like a bunch of x86 cores. And then there's a ton of specialized instruction set chips around it. There's a chip for accelerating like HVEC video. There's chips that are dedicated to all sorts of like different types of performance. Sometimes they're AI optimized chips like you see in Apple, and some of the new Intel chips are coming with this. But FPGAs, the cool thing is you can reprogram them on the fly, and they're not as fast as dedicated hardware, but they're far faster than software. And so we use FPGAs in this system to do basically offload a bunch of common tasks from things like validators. And we thought this was going to be like the biggest, most awesome use case for the 00 network. And for some networks like Solana, that is a really powerful system. But as we've gotten into it more, there's actually other advantages that 00 brings to these types of networks, like the ability to use technologies like multicast. And we can get into what all these are. But that has actually become one of the most interesting areas where we can look at this and say, oh yes, everyone's actually very excited about using multicast, for example. And so some of this has been, like, one of the beauties of crypto and open source software in general is you build things in public, right? You're not like Facebook sitting there being like, oh, I hope chatbots are going to be a real thing, and launching a whole marketing campaign. And then 4 years later, how many people are really using like my chatbot to go talk to your chatbot to book a restaurant reservation? Like, that still does not happen. And so we get a lot of feedback in real time about what we're building. And we see a lot of people come to us and say, oh, can I use this for this? And we say, yeah, sure. I guess we never thought of that before, but I don't see any reason why not. And that's one of the coolest things about building in public.
I'm curious about team, right? This is a pretty specialized area that you're building in. You know, it takes people that are passionate about the space. I'm curious about how you went about building your team, and what do you look for in those people to indicate that they're the winning horses to join you?
Yeah, I will say we have had an incredible amount of success in hiring. I have been just thrilled with the team we've been able to assemble here. A lot of the people who originally joined us, first off, maybe I can start with a bit of our structures. We have the labs company, which is Malbec Labs, and we have two co-founders based there, Andrew McConnell and Matteo Ward. And most of the engineering work gets done at the labs organization, and then I run the foundation. And so on the lab side, Andrew has spent 15 years in high-performance networking in the financial sector. Matteo, actually, his first job was working for Global Crossing back in the day, and they were the company that ran the first global fiber network around the world. And he's then did the microwave transition and shortwave transitions and ran a carrier back in the day. And so a lot of the original engineers that we hired were simply people that they had worked with before and who they thought were exceptional and would be incredible additional people to bring on for this. And almost none of those engineers had any experience in crypto, because the world of high-performance networking, there's never really been an application for blockchain before in these things. And so a lot of the folks at the foundation that like I've brought on board are people I used to work with too, but we've had some really awesome people just come in applications. And building a team like this, one of the things we did from the onset is there's basically no one junior on the team. We have about 20 people at the moment who work across the project, and they all have basically at least 8 years of experience within their domain. And so there's a lot of, I would say, folk logic out there, for lack of a better term, that's, oh, don't buy it, don't get only senior people, make sure you're supplementing with some junior people, save money, all these types of things. And I think what we've really found throughout this process is if you want to build a product quickly and you want to get it to market quickly, you really need people who not even know the technology stack, but know how to get work done. I love crypto, but we reinvent the wheel constantly. we really reinvent the wheel when it comes to how to get work done. And so having people who've worked in large organizations before, for stock exchanges or for high frequency trading firms, there's just a level of willingness and understanding of how to get work done that tends to be harder to find in crypto. And so we've just been able to assemble an incredible collection of people, honestly.
This episode is brought to you by PropelOff. People take authentication for granted, but it's more than how customers log into your product. It's how you manage your relationship with your users. The easiest way to make authentication your advantage is to use PropelOff. PropelOff is more than just functional. It's powerful. With tools like Managed UIs, Enterprise SSO, robust user management features, and actionable insights, PropelOff adapts as your product grows. And the best part? When auth is effortless, your team can focus on scaling, not troubleshooting. That means more releases, happier customers, and more growth for your business. Save dev time, win over your customers, and propel your business forward with PropelOff. Check them out at propeloff.com. That's PROPELAUTH.com. This episode is sponsored by MailySearch. In today's digital landscape, search isn't just a feature, it's a cornerstone. And you need a user experience that drives customer satisfaction. You need MailySearch. MailySearch is lightning fast performance, returning answers in less than 50 milliseconds. Yeah, you heard that right. Faster than the blink of an eye. The open source AI search engine is plug and play, so you can get up and running in minutes with smart presets, allowing you to start searching through your data with zero configuration. MailySearch utilizes advanced full-text search and AI, ensuring your results are ultra-relevant with semantic depth. It's multimodal, supporting images, videos, and audio, along with being federated, i.e. searching across multiple data sources. And it's developer-friendly. Whether you're building a content-rich website or enterprise application, MailySearch delivers the experience your users expect and deserve. For a limited time, CodeStory users can get 2 months free. Use the promo code CODESTORY, all one word, at checkout. Just go to MailySearch.com and get started today. That's MEILI search.com. I'm curious about scalability. Now, this is going to be interesting, given what you're trying to solve and how you're going about it, how you're starting, and perhaps where you're going to go. I'm curious about either, where scalability has, been challenging already, or where you believe scalability is going to bite you in the future, or that you're preparing for. Tell me about that. Tell me about how you approach that.
For us, as we look at this on the network side, these things scale out pretty well. One of the really cool things about what we do, and one of the really cool things about networking in general, is it exists. Right? There's work that's being done sometimes in these types of organizations where it's, we have to do a lot of real computer science and real engineering work. And most of what we're building is, I would call it just work. And not to reduce what we're doing at all, but the work we're doing works in a lot of different ways. We're taking a lot of existing technologies and we're adapting them to use in a distributed, decentralized system. But one of the cool pieces about this is we actually have a lot of these frameworks and models built out. And so we can move much more quickly, I think, than a lot of other companies might be moving in something like this. And so the scalability sides of things, our limiting factors of scalability, I would say, are closer to what the internet looks like than what you normally see in blockchain.
Okay, as you step out on the balcony, even pre-launch right now, and you look across all that you've built thus far, what are you most proud of?
I think one of the things that we've managed to do very well is convince the blockchain space in very short order that high performance networking is something they have to take very seriously. And that was not necessarily guaranteed beforehand. When we started this process back in October of last year, it was this idea of, does crypto really need this? Do we really need high performance networking? And one of the things that's been really cool to see is how many people across the space, from companies that I used to compete with, right, when I was running the strategy at Solana Foundation, who are we'd love to work with you guys. We need to understand this space more. We've been behind on high performance networking. And that's been really awesome to see. Is I think that there's actually a surprising amount of camaraderie and that we don't actually seem like we are competitive to these folks. And that's one of the coolest things to see is like the promise of open source software and these sorts of things has always been that everyone can come together and build better things for the future. And that really does seem to be the case here.
Let's flip the script a little bit. Tell me about a mistake you made and how you and your team responded to it.
I think most of the issues that we've run into, I wouldn't exactly call them mistakes, but they are with the traditional banking sector. And this has improved a lot, let me just say, over the last few months, maybe the last 5 months or so. But it was really true. And I know this is this ends up becoming very political. And I have a lot of friends who didn't believe this until it happened to me, but like debanking was a real thing that occurred under the last administration. It was extremely difficult for companies doing anything with blockchain to get banks in the United States. I, as an individual, I had my bank try and fire me as a customer because I worked for the Solana Foundation. I was actually in the process of getting a mortgage from them, and the mortgage loan officer that I worked with was like very mad at his own bank. So I got a little bit more of the inside scoop on this than you might normally see. But he genuinely said, if you quit your job, we can lend to you, which is like an insane thing to say like that. I would be a more attractive person to lend to if I was unemployed. We saw this even in trying to get banking relationships set up for 00 in the early days. We would have companies be like, oh yes, we can work with you guys. We don't do any crypto trading, right? We're not an investment firm. We're a Cayman Foundation. This is basically a nonprofit organization is the rough analogy to the structure the thing works under. And even that they would say, oh, we're worried. We're not sure we can work with you guys. And some of the clarity that's come from regulators over the last few months has really changed that landscape in that we can now get banking relationships with places we wouldn't have been able to before. And this all sounds very, oh, what are these crypto people doing complaining about like banking relationships? But like when you do a fundraise for $28 million like we did, you want to put that basically in treasuries. You want to put that in extremely stable, long-term things that have either FDIC insurance or treasuries. They don't exactly have FDIC insurance, but they basically have FDIC insurance, and that the U.S. government defaulting is the only thing that really causes problems for those. And we could not figure out for months how to actually get like a solid banking relationship. And then things started to change. And so it's not exactly a mistake that we made in the process, but I think we underestimated how difficult it was going to be allowed to work in the traditional financial space. And we're not even like a DeFi project. We're like the most boring vanilla crypto project you could ever imagine. This is physical infrastructure for fiber.
This will be super exciting. You're pre-launch, so I know you have a lot of dreams on the table. Tell me what the future looks like for 00, for what you're building and for your team in general.
One of the things you would expect is that there's some way to pay for prioritization on the internet. And there is actually no way to pay for prioritization on the internet directly. Look, if we are successful over the long term, there's a few cool things that will happen that I think are meaningful both for usability and for security. So the first is that more companies will have access to dedicated private networking without the cost of going out and assembling a whole fiber network themselves, which right now is extremely expensive to do. The other thing is over time, we can actually switch the authentication methods that the public internet runs on from this system right now where you don't really think about this, but like you go to, let's say, google.com, right? And you're not really going to google.com. You're going to an IP address, but there's no actual way that you know that IP address is actually Google except by using the certificate. And their certificate is by a trusted intermediary. It's one of these things where the internet was never built as a security first framework. It was built as a bunch of academics in a beautiful, open information sharing way. But the idea that there would be value on the internet was like never part of the idea of the original internet. And so we can actually do things like public-private key cryptography. So you know that you are talking to the server that you think you are talking to. We can do routing based on public key, private key encryption, as opposed to based on DNS records and IP addresses. And so there's a lot of, I would say, security upgrades that can be brought to general routing on the internet using some of these technologies. But the existing carriers really aren't incentivized to bring any of this stuff to market because of the way the economics of the internet work. If there was a way to do this without building a parallel internet, we would definitely not be building a parallel internet. It is a big, large, complicated endeavor to try and do what we're doing, but we really don't think there's another way to go about it.
Austin, let's switch to you. Who influences the way that you work? Name a person or many persons or something you look up to and why.
There's a number of different people here. So two of them are definitely Anatoly Yakovenko and Raj Gokul, who I worked for the last 4 years at Solana Foundation. Toly has this clarity of thought when it comes to engineering and like first principles system design that I think is incredibly insightful. And Raj brings this kind of focus on attention and on the idea of an attention economy and the importance of kind of generating your own story and your own narrative through that process. Another one is Tony Fidel's book from a few years ago called Build. I think he is a very clear thinker on like how to build and organize organizations, how to get work done in them, how to also not let yourself become part of like a group think. I think there's a lot of that nowadays, and it's one of the most detrimental things in software development is like companies just have one way of thinking and everyone within that company adapts to that one way of thinking. And so that's a book I would recommend to anyone who's starting to go through the process of either being a founder or working at a company and feeling like there's maybe some gaslighting going on, there's maybe some yes men in the room, and you're like, how do I actually push back on this without getting fired? That's a good book I would recommend.
Okay, Austin, last question. So you're getting on a plane and you're sitting next to a young entrepreneur who's built the next big thing. They're jazzed about it. They can't wait to show it off to the world and can't wait to show it off to you right there on the plane. What advice do you give that person? Haven't gone down this road a bit.
I would say the biggest single piece of advice I would give an entrepreneur is to not listen too much to anyone else. That if you've gotten to the place where you have something that has product market fit, it is starting to take off, you can feel the excitement coming for the thing, that's probably because your original vision is pretty spot on. And you will have investors who say, oh, you've got to pivot or do this now. And they're usually wrong. There's usually some glimmer of truth in it, right? And this isn't to say be an ego monster and never doubt yourself. But usually the reason something is successful is because the original idea was super solid. And staying true to that in whatever form you can is quite important for the long-term success of an organization. The other one I would say is there will be a moment where people tell you, okay, you got to hire some adults. Go find some ex-Google executives or guys who are big at Microsoft, or maybe now it's like people who help scale OpenAI. And most of those people are usually worthless. And the reason I'll say that they're usually worthless is luck has so much to do with success in technology, right? You can be a mid-level employee that just was at a company that hit it really big, and suddenly you're seen as the top 2% of talent. And you're not the top 2% of talent. You just happen to work for OpenAI or Solana or whatever. Throw the name of or Uber in the early days. And that doesn't mean that you're incredible at what you do necessarily. And so if you are like an up-and-coming company that hasn't really broken out yet, and you're like, wow, how did we attract this like top 2% talent from this incredible big company? Chances are they're not actually top 2% talent. Be very honest with yourself about the stage your company is in, and almost, do we deserve to attract this level of talent at the moment? And if the answer is no, go check references on that person. Like, the biggest advice I can give people in hiring is always check references, and several references, and don't look for negative reviews. It's legally almost impossible to give a negative review of an employee nowadays. If you're in New York, if you're in California, a bunch of other states, it is like no one will ever tell you don't hire this person. What you'll get is you'll get reviews back of them that are not strong endorsements. Like a non-strong endorsement is a anti-endorsement nowadays. These are just like some practical things that like I think people will maybe appreciate. Hire a good general counsel. It'll save you millions and millions of dollars. So many people try and skimp on general counsel. When you've raised money, like you need a good lawyer. Like there is no substitute for a good lawyer. There are companies I know that tried to save $400,000 by not hiring a GC. and then spend $5 million in outside counsel. It would be like saying, we're going to outsource all of our engineering. You can't do that for obvious reasons, but legal is as much an unblocker as it is something that protects you. And if you have a good general counsel on your side, willing to push a little bit on what is possible, it will unblock so much product development for you, especially if you're working in a gray space like crypto.
100% fantastic advice, all of it. Well, Austin, thank you for being on the show today, and thank you for telling the creation story of 00.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And this concludes another chapter of Code Story. Code Story is hosted and produced by Noah Labhart. Be sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or the podcasting app of your choice. And when you get a chance, leave us a review. Both things help us out tremendously. And thanks again for listening.
You set the gold standard for your business. Your website should do the same. Wix puts you at the helm, so you can enjoy the creative freedom of designing your site just the way you want. Want someone to bounce your ideas off? Talk with AI to create a beautiful site together. Whatever your business, manage it from one place and tie it all together with a personalized domain name. Gear up for success with a brand that says you best. You can do it yourself on Wix.
This is a call to the leaders who want to redefine their impact. Tackle our world's greatest challenges with a powerful network of global business leaders at MIT Sloan School of Management.
Your child has so much potential, but your local schools may not be right for them. Check out K-12. K-12-powered schools are accredited tuition-free online public schools for students in kindergarten through 12th grade. This is not your typical homeschooling. With state-certified teachers specially trained to teach online, your child will learn at their speed, at home, with innovative, engaging technology. Join the more than 3 million families who have chosen K-12. Go to k12.com/podcast today to learn more. That's k12.com/podcast.